to the show. This is The Force Always. My name is Diz, aka David Zammit. Let's get on with the show with the news, views, reviews, and interviews. This should be an interesting episode because of a particular news. So let's get into the news. The real big news is that Leslye Headland, the creator of the Acolyte, has come out and sort of really expressed yet again more reasons of why her show, The Acolyte, was cancelled and didn't really hit audiences. Yes, you can find the written version of this online. She has come out and said, look, there's many reasons, but one of them was about YouTubers, and so that's interesting in itself. And look, a bit more about that later on in the show on my behalf, but that is making news. And as I always say, with the news for Starfighter and or Mandalorian and Grogu, there's no news. That is good news. No news at the moment, which is good. But we need some Mandalorian and Grogu advertising soon, just to lead up. But I'm sure it's going to happen during Christmas time. Anyway, that's the news for this time around. Let's get on with views. Views is my story ideas. I accept Star Wars for what it is from the beginning to the end. So far at the moment in the Star Wars story timeline is the Acolyte and all the way through to the Rise of Skywalker. So far. Anyway, my story idea is something to do with the Acolyte. Now, there was an inclusion in that particular series that actually gets a lot of criticism, and I think it's like there's things in Star Wars that gets a lot of criticism that I just don't get why it gets a lot of criticism. I get the passionate reasoning behind the fans. We all have it, but you know there was a snippet. I think it was the last episode. Actually, I'm sure it's the last episode of the Acolyte where we see a creature come out of the cave, which is technically Darth Plagueis, sort of like, you know, being creepy and sort of spying on some Jedi, or, you know, just sort of seeing what's going on. Would I have kept this in the Acolyte? And I'll say yes. I mean, look, maybe it would have, you know, Darth Plagueis, the way that I view Darth Plagueis and the way a lot of other Star Wars fans view Darth Plagueis, the introduction of him would have been better in a Darth Plagueis standalone film, but having him in this time period and the way he came out, I think is good. It sort of creates mystery and intrigue, and, you know, sort of how this person or this alien or this creature sort of evolved. I think it's good. That was one part of the show that I 100% agree with. Whether you agree with me or not is going to be another thing. But Darth Plagueis having that moment of fame in the Acolyte, as not my story idea, but in someone else's story idea, which was, you know, by the creators of the Acolyte, I thought it was good. I just thought it would have been better if we were introduced to Darth Plagueis, you know, visually, audibly, whateverly, as a standalone film about Darth Plagueis with his apprentice, Palpatine. Anyway, that's my story idea. Let's get into reviews. Before I do that, as you can tell by the dew, because you can tell I'm rocking a coffee. It's the morning here. Anyway, this is my review. This is another product I've got. The Child. Now, why is this significant? Well, look at it. back then, um, the whole the whole Star Wars community did not know who this little green alien was. We knew it was a baby Yoda, as we all referred to as, because it looked like Yoda, and it was a baby version. If that's possible, even as small as he is, how can it be? Well, he looked like a baby, sounded like a baby. So, and it was referred to as the child. That thing there has the child on it. It's now known. It's now known as Grogu. So, any of these Funko Pops or any figures that you have with, the other names like the child, maybe you've got something with Baby Yoda on it, which I don't think so. But this increases the values because this was something that was something different and unique to that time period. It makes the value of it. Look, I wouldn't give it up. I got that through COVID. I remember that. I had to order it online, and it was one of those times that it was just exciting to get something through, postal. It was exciting that it was a bit hard to get, and all of us going through COVID, especially in my town, Melbourne, was absolutely insane. Just to give you a fun fact about COVID in Melbourne, we were the longest standing COVID protected area in the whole world, meaning our government here decided to have restrictions at pretty high levels for the longest time in the world. It was relentless, but that's another conversation. So that review there, that particular item I've got, that I would say, look, I'll give that a 9 out of 10. I'm not in love with Baby Yoda or the child or Grogu as many people are. I think he's good, I just don't think he's the number one. Yes, but the actual packaging, the name on it, having the child, and also it is being Baby Yoda or child or Grogu. So it's a 9 out of 10 for me. So let's get into interviews. Before I sort of get on with the questions in interviews, I thought I'd just take a bit of an opinionated point on my behalf. So Leslye Headland, the creator of, or I'd say one of the creators, it really doesn't take one, but many, even back in the day with George Lucas, there would have been a number of creators who would not have been recognized. But going back to Leslye Headland, the known creator for The Acolyte, which is a TV series on Disney Plus, and it really is the most furthest back we've got in the storyline of Star Wars. Has come out with an interview sort of explaining why the failure and what she thought and when, how, and stuff like that. And one of the points was about YouTubers. Now, I've said many times that I don't think it's the YouTubers themselves that is the actual problem. I think the researchers at Disney or people in Disney checking out YouTube, which is an accessible form, and getting opinions and ideas through YouTube is the problem. Personally, to get your knowledge of points of characters and story and stuff like that needs to be sort of dove into the actual story of Star Wars. To get opinions and why and when and how from people, any people, it's going to be influenced. There's going to be haters and lovers, and I just think it's just not. It's not. It's not effective. Effective for creating story. The story of Star Wars, for me, is really a real story, a real life story that gets into the whole Star Wars, sci-fi element of it. Let's say it's not sci-fi, but let's simply explain that. I think the whole research on checking out YouTubers back in the day from other channels, other than the known big channels, Star Wars channels, there was movie channels, and they were just throwing all these ideas. They should have a director for each, a different writer for each. They should, something original. They should go explore certain characters. They should maybe do something that's this and that. And even though these are great ideas from these particular people, it's someone else's idea, and it's causing you to have ideas that becomes so abstract to what really you want to write about Star Wars. I know I could write a Star Wars film. I don't have any experience. I don't have any qualifications, but the story is a story I know, and I could do something. But when you put something out there that is, the only criticism I have, there's two things of The Acolyte. And this is not to say that I don't accept the story for what it is, because I do accept The Acolyte. I think it was mildly good. That's it. Mildly good. But I think the whole look of the prequel era in The Acolyte was a bit jarring, because it seemed like it was coming from the prequel era, not 100 years before, which was when it was meant to be set. When they were in the temple, or it just looked like the prequel era, and it looked too clean and neat. Star Wars is a used future. That's the part. Now, the other part was the whole idea that the Acolyte was going to be a Sith story. I was thinking this is going to be like this horrific sort of carnage of insane visuals, almost sort of like Predator Badlands, if you've seen that film. Very intense, gritty, stuff like that. That's, I was expecting a visualization of that nature, yet it was a little bit too prequel feeling, which is nothing against prequels. The prequels stand to be for what they are, but the time period of The Acolyte is 100 years before the prequels, and it just looked too similar. Yes, things may not evolve quickly, but I think in story writing you need to have difference. And one thing that George Lucas did, not to praise George Lucas as, well, he is the god of Star Wars, but he always used colors and textures and terrains, sort of to give difference to areas, and even good and bad, and stuff like that, and just giving a new movie a different look. When he went to Empire Strikes Back, it was a very snow-driven planet sort of thing in the beginning. It really come off, those type of colors, snow colors. And then Return of the Jedi was very, jungly, very forest-like, and those greens and earth tones became a sort of a iconic memory of that film. And but I just think, I think the whole idea that it was meant to be a real Sith-driven story, or really evil type story, Sith technically didn't exist then, because it was stated by Mr. Mundine, I think his name is, the Jedi that was sort of misplaced in that particular Acolyte series. He was a famous Jedi in the prequels, and he's the one that said, well, the Sith has been extinct for more than a millennium. And I don't know. I just think there is too much emphasis on that character being misplaced, when you can actually write him still being in that as maybe another character's name. And you could also understand that maybe he was holding a secret, and he really was using a sensibility of the Force to even cloud the other Jedi, even though he's not as strong as the other Jedi, but he obviously is a master, so he should be able to cloud other people's thoughts, and thought he'd just keep that a secret. Like he that could be an idea. But anyway, so Leslye Headland has come out with an interview sort of, explaining the reasons of the failure or the cancellation and her thoughts. And one of them was YouTubers. I get the whole thing. I do think YouTubers can influence a lot of people, especially when you've got a lot of subscribers. There's a lot of people out there, and that's good. That they have a lot of subscribers. It's good that they are good, good influence. But doing research when writing a Star Wars film or any film, to rely on that is just a mistake. That's what I think. Anyway, that was my little opinionated piece in interviewing myself at this point. It's a real sore topic still in Star Wars, and we just need to sort of keep thinking of moving forward. And Starfighter, the movie 2027, that is moving forward. That's great. Anyway, so let's now get into the comments, and we have our favourite man, Michael from Werribee South, part of Melbourne. Very dark side area, let me tell you that. His questions to me was, who is Lando Calrissian's co-pilot in Episode 6, Return of the Jedi? Name num. That's it. It's a grey skin alien with a unusual headpiece, with a sort of reddish maroon and maybe navy colour clothing. Name num. That's it. And the face of this particular character with the actual actor was used to create the look of that particular co-pilot of Lando Calrissian, Nim Num. Anyway, so this next question, which is coming from Michael from Werribee South, can you believe it, is the Imperial Pro Droid was also known by another name. What is it? Now, this is relevant and irrelevant, but they were known as Viper Droids. And I just, it's one of those names that gets created in the lore of Star Wars outside the movies. I don't think the actual... I cannot confirm 100%, but I've watched Star Wars a fair bit. I cannot remember hearing the word Viper Droid in the canon movies. Anyway, so that was the Imperial Probe Droids, which was actually out there looking out for Luke Skywalker for a time being, was known as Viper Droids. Now, the next question from Michael from Werribee South is, the Star Wars movie is coming out in December. In what month were all original Star Wars films released? Okay, so it's a very unusual question. I think he got excited. I think Michael got excited writing that question because it doesn't make sense. But because I know Michael, I think he's just saying what were all the original release months of the Star Wars films. Well, that's May. It's a pretty known fact by hardcore Star Wars fans. That's the answer to that question. And for Michael, maybe just sort of slow down when you're writing a question. Anyway, so the next question, which is the first original theatrical movie where we actually see Jabba the Hutt? Now, this is a real interesting question. It actually depends on when you were born actually on Earth. Because the first time we saw Jabba the Hutt as a kid was Return of the Jedi. Technically. Later years, in the late 90s, when these special editions came out, we saw Jabba the Hutt come out, be seen in A New Hope, Episode 4, the first movie. Because it was an actual scene that got included into New Hope. It was never there in the first place. Then the prequels came from 99 onwards. So technically the first time we saw Jabba the Hutt was Episode 1. Phantom Menace. So it depends on when you were born when we actually saw Jabba the Hutt for the first time. But for me, it was Return of the Jedi. I'm that old. That's right. So that's a very interesting question, I'll tell you that. Good on Michael from Werribee South. Woo! Anyway, so the next question is, what does at stand for? At or ATAT? It depends on how you want to pronounce it, really. It's all-terrain something. All-terrain. It's an all-terrain something. My God, I'm gonna have to Google it. I know it's all-terrain, but let's have a look. Let's go to the Google. Okay, let's have a look at this. What does AT... Okay, so the answer is, yeah, look, I was partly right. All-terrain armoured transport. That's what AT or ATAT stands for. Let's get into the second last question from Michael from Werribee South. And what is the name of Boba Fett's ship? Well, that's a pretty standard understanding for a hardcore Star Wars fan, or even moderate. Slave One. The most unusual name, but it's the name, and it works. But yeah, Slave One. The final question of today: who's the only Rebel pilot to survive all 3 movies in the original trilogy? And I'll tell you, I know who this person is. And I had always thought to get a photo op with this person when I went to these Star Wars celebrations on an autograph. But I just, they're quite expensive, so I just had to sort of budget for these things. It's Wedge Antilles. Wedge Antilles is the pilot. So really, that is the questions from Michael and also the show. If you have any comments or questions, please send them via my YouTube channel. I don't really have an Instagram. I don't really have X or Twitter to have that. So just let's keep it in here. That'd be great. Subscribe to the channel if you like. It's up to you. Press notifications and you'll get a instant reminder I put up a video. And until next time, my friends, keep rocking.